Hi, everybody. This is Marty Watts with America Talk It Up. And boy, we have a show today. I've got my co host, Ed Nunes. Hey, Ed, we've got some good news we want to announce to all the people that watch America Talk It Up. We are now going to be available on ProViewNetworks.com website. You can go up there and watch our show on 8 o'clock on Thursday nights. If you don't have Comcast cable, you can now go up on the internet and watch our show on ProViewNetwork.com. Isn't that good news, Ed?
You know what? It really is, because a lot of people don't have Comcast. I got to tell you another thing too, that a lot of people have different packages that they're watching as far as TV, and people do have Comcast, but if you don't, there'll be options for you to watch, and I think that's been a lot of people's ask that have direct TV that have asked questions, and so now they're going to be able to see it, and I think that's great news.
And so what's going to be incredible is when we go into the high school football season and basketball, we'll be able to put the game on Comcast 26 cable, or you can go on the internet and watch it for free, no charge. And there's a possibility we might be able to put the games on channel 27 too. So it's going to definitely expand our viewership. And what's great about it is that you don't have to have a Comcast cable bill to watch our show. Now, of course, you can still go up and watch us on our website, our Facebook page, America Talk It Up, or you can go to YouTube, and please subscribe to our YouTube channel, and please hit the like button. But with that said, we're going to be able to reach more people, and my goal is to get us on as many platforms as we can, Ed.
You know what? That's what it's all about these days, is platforms. And that's been said to me. Jimmy Tramp, who our great producer, has talked about that. He's got a lot of ideas behind the scenes. He knows a lot of things about media, way more than I know. I just get on and I talk, and Jimmy knows more about media platforms, and the guys at the studio, they know that. The station I work for, 99.9 in town, my guy that I work with, Byron Padrell, who owns the station, always talks about creating his own channel over there. So, I think one thing's important to talk about, we're going to talk about this later, is entertainment options are changing every day, right? Everything you can get. Back in the day, think about it, Marty. Now, and we talk about great American inventors too, but Alexander Graham Bell invented the telephone, right? He invented the telephone. Do you think if he came back today and we said, look, you got iPhones and everything else, and you can watch things on your phone, what would his reaction be? What would I would love to see him and the Wright brothers come back. Of course you can't do that. These are just, I'm just talking out loud, but you imagine the Wright brothers coming back to see what aviation became, Thomas Alva Edison coming back to see all the things that he did, right? So the phone is becoming, you can watch it on your phone, right? You mentioned you can watch it on your computer. You can watch it a number of different places, and you don't have to have Comcast and have that bill. So that's important.
So just so you know, back in 1960, when we came to Albuquerque, there was only 4 channels, Ed. There was Channel 7, ABC, Channel 4, KOB, Channel 13, CBS, and then there was Channel 5, the educational channel. In those days, it was owned by APS and the University of New Mexico. And those were the only channels you could get. And if you, and that was it. There was no cable TV, no satellite. And that was like that all the way until probably the mid 70s when cable TV came to Albuquerque. Now, by the early 70s, they had a couple independent channels, but there wasn't too much programming you could get back in those days. You remember those days, Ed?
Okay, think about this. Now, yes, of course I do. And so I think now we don't have to get out of our chair now to change channels, right? We've got a remote. Back in the day, you had to get up and switch channels by your hand, right? There's no remote back in the day. So it's way different now. You're right. 4 channels, and that's all you had. Now, I remember Friday nights with the Brady Bunch, the Partridge Family, and then it might be Lobo basketball when they were on, right? I remember watching a lot of Lobo basketball, not so much Lobo football, but Lobo basketball was on. Well, and so you're getting ready to watch the game. So people don't understand the kids. Now, how many channels are there? On some packages, you can get up to 1,000 channels. And so back in the day, it's important. And and I remember my dad, we had an old set, man. We had an old TV set. My dad didn't make a lot of money. But you know what? He gave us every darn thing he could. He sure did. He worked and worked and worked. But I remember the TV set we had, and if you turned the volume up, it was ear splitting. So we had to figure out a way to control that. And so, as my dad got more money for the jobs that he did, we got better TVs. But now think about it. They're in high definition, right? They're almost like coming out of the seats. So
So
entertainment has changed.
Do you remember the first color TV set that your family ever had?
Yes, I think, gosh, I'm trying to remember. Yeah, it was a while back. Gosh, barely. I barely remember it. Barely. It was a old-fashioned, probably a Zenith or an RCA. Do you remember those RCAs and Zeniths? And it wasn't, by any definition, it wasn't high standard of today. It just did the job. As
So
Americans, we're
Go
spoiled as
ahead.
Americans. We expect the best, and Americans. That's another thing. Maybe we can talk about in our segment is the entitled Americans. Sometimes this is America Talk It Up, and sometimes we expect so much from our entertainment, from our food. The other day, and this is just maybe off the subject. I take my granddaughter home down mountain, and there's a row of homeless people in tents. And it does, every time I see that, it gets me, man. Think about the weather we had the last 2 days. It's freezing, right? Really cold. And there is a shelter down there that they can try to get a bed at. But anyway, it's kind of off the subject, but Americans expect so much from their TV, from their entertainment, and we can even talk about radio, Marty. Back in the day, President Roosevelt, the fireside chats, those kind of things. I mean, yeah, there's so many things we can go with just TV. You made me think of so many other things, but just mentioning 4 channels on TV.
And of course, back in the early 60s, the only shows that you could watch on color was Bonanza. Maybe it was a big thing at the Johnny Carson show became color, but there was only 2 or 3 shows a night that was on color. Most of the shows were black and white. And I remember the first time I ever saw the Lobos in color was in 1964. They made it to the finals of the NIT. And they played Bradley, and they lost to Bradley. That was the first great team they had with Bob King, Ira Harge, 1964. And the game was on CBS primetime on Saturday. The Lobos played for the finals, and it was on color TV. And I remember my dad went and got a new TV set, and we got to watch that game. We invited our neighbors over. It was the big thing to watch the Lobos in color back in 1964. That was quite a thing.
That started. Now I was 2 years old, but I remember reading the history. Now when they lost when your game you mentioned, but I think that at the airport there was 3,000 fans waiting for them when they got back, and that started Lobo Mania under Bob King.
And they gave Bob King a brand new car at the Johnson Gym. That was before the pit was built. That's when Lobo Mania started. And that's why it's so sad to see where the Lobos are right now, because back in 1964, 65, those middle 60s, all we talked about was Lobos. But see, they didn't compete with too many teams. And when they did get on television, it was a big thing. Another thing I was going to tell you, on Friday night on Channel 7, that's ABC, after the Channel Big 7 news and weather report, they always had a Tarzan movie. And when I was a kid, we asked my mom and dad, we could stay up to midnight. It was the only night of the week that we were able to stay up to midnight. And we had popcorn and everything. It was Tarzan with Johnny Weissmuller.
Johnny Weissmuller was one of the first Tarzans. gosh, that guy, I remember, I didn't see, I just read about him. That guy was in some tremendous shape back then, and they didn't have the diet and the workout programs that they do now. But I'll tell you what, Weissmuller, sort of like Jack LaLanne. Jack LaLanne lived to what, 95, 90, 94. Jack LaLanne had talked about when he was a kid having a sugar attack, right? And then he never consumed sugar after a certain point in his life ever again, ever. The guy was an amazing. You remember when he worked out in those long sweats? It was used to be on Channel 7 at 9 o'clock. Jack LaLanne, and all that music. Jack LaLanne was amazing. So again, you mentioned Johnny Weissmuller makes me think of those guys that were in shape at that time, and it was different being in shape at that time because there wasn't they had to do it mostly on their own because there wasn't the nutrition that they have today or the workout places that they have today. So I
So
got to tell you another. I got to tell you another story.
yeah, go
You
ahead.
mentioned Channel 7. You remember Dialing for Dollars? I remember with Howard Morgan. 2 o'clock on Channel 7 afternoon movie, and then Howard Morgan would pick the name out of the bin. He'd spin it around, and then he'd pick up the name and call up Jim Smith. Are you watching the movie? And Dialing for Dollars. So there was a jackpot you could win, and those are some memories from back in the day.
So Howard Morgan, his son, went to school with me in Inez Elementary School. He was in our grade. Here's a Johnny Weissmuller story. I got two of them. One of them was back in the 60s at the Tila Coliseum. They had called the Sportsman Show, where they brought in the boats and hunters, and they advertised the new boats, the new sporting equipment, anything. And every year the promoter would bring in a star to bring people in. And one year he brought Johnny Weissmuller. I think it was 1965 or something. And I remember I made my dad take me down to the state fairgrounds to go meet Johnny Weissmuller. And 3 times during the Sportsman Show, he would get up there on the platform and do the Tarzan yell. And everybody got excited. But here's a story about Johnny Weissmuller. In 1924, he was the Olympic champion in Paris, France. The 1924 Olympic Games. I think he was the 50-meter champion, 100 meters.
Swimming.
He won 2
Right.
gold medals, and that's how he became famous. And somebody saw him in Hollywood, and then he started doing those Hollywood talkies in 1930. But here's something. We were talking about Jim Thorpe, how great an athlete he was. In 1925, Jim Thorpe challenged Johnny Weissmuller in a 25-meter race, not 50 meters or 100, and Jim Thorpe beat him in a swimming race. And I remember Thorpe was the greatest Olympic athlete in 1912. He won the pentathlon and decathlon. Of course, he broke 5 world records in 1912 from Stockholm, Sweden. But he challenged, that's what great athlete, that's why Jim Thorpe, in the first part of the 20th century, he was probably the greatest athlete we ever produced. Native American. He was from the Fox Indian Nation, their reservation out in Oklahoma. But anyway, that's a great story. And of course, I got to see Johnny Weissmuller do that Tarzan yell, and every kid went nuts that day at the Coliseum.
You know what? I don't remember where that yell. And again, every Tarzan, Brandon, gosh, I can't remember what his name was. He played Tarzan about 97. I can't remember what his Brandon something, but that yell used to make me laugh, right? He's doing that yell and he's calling all the animals in the jungle. They did it even on cartoons, that yell. And I can imitate it, but I just think about it, and that's part of the Tarzan folklore, right? And then he's swinging on the vines, swinging from tree to tree. Tarzan and Jane. So that's some American folklore. This is, again, it's America, talk it up. Tarzan's an American icon, right? Or, people know who Tarzan is in America. So kind of funny there.
So I was in the 8th grade, and I was going to Monroe Junior High School, and I was going out with this girl named Jane Garrett, who her dad was the son of Pat Garrett. Her grandfather was Pat Garrett. And we went to a costume party for Halloween, and I went as Tarzan. She went with Jane. I said, I'm Tarzan, you're Jane," and it was it was a masquerade party or a costume party. So so that was a lot of. There's that
There it
Tarzan
is.
yell.
There's that yell. There it is. I knew Jimmy would get it up for us, man. Yeah,
So
that's funny.
talking about an American icon, Johnny Weissmuller and Tarzan. So people, I guess if you're from the younger generation, please Google Johnny Weissmuller, Google Tarzan. I guess you can still watch those movies, right?
Oh
You
yeah,
can
yeah. There's no
probably
doubt.
go up on Netflix and get those movies.
No, all you got to do is go to your TVs to think about this, right? We said this. All I got to do is speak into my remote and say Tarzan movies, and about 5 or 6 will come up on my screen. Now I've got to pay for them, but again, we talked about entertainment. But when you mentioned Tarzan, I have to laugh. I think my dad liked those movies. My mom was not a fan of those movies. Like she wasn't a fan of Planet of the Apes. My dad loved that, the original, not the 2002 movie, which was horrible. I'm talking about Charlton Heston, Planet of the Apes, which was to me one of the best sci-fi movies I ever saw. I loved it. I've watched it 30 times, man. And I don't think anybody can forget at the end when he's riding his horse, and he sees the Statue of Liberty and understands that they've blown the world up with a nuclear bomb. That thing always got me at the end. I have to, no matter how many times I've watched it, I have to watch the end because the ending is epic, right? It's an epic ending in a sci-fi movie. So, we're bringing up all these old guys. Charlton Heston, how great was he? Ben-Hur. I watched the 10 Commandments. How many times did you watch Charlton Heston? Now, you probably saw him a little bit more than I did in some other movies. But
I actually, you know what, Ed, I agree with you on this point. He was in Ben-Hur. And of course, Ben-Hur was written by Wallace.
Lew Wallace.
What?
Lew Wallace, former governor of New Mexico.
He wrote that book when he was territory governor of New Mexico back in 1880 something, Ben-Hur. So the book was written. Of course, they made it in the movie. And of course, Charles Heston played in the 10 Commandments. But you know what? Of all the performance, I agree with him. This is what I agree. I think when he was in Planet of the Apes, that was really a great movie because it had the sci-fi, they had the technology to make these apes talk English or whatever. It was a great movie. I thought it was, at that time, it was one of the best sci-fi movies that ever come out. And they had a good act. The actors in that movie was excellent. And Charles Heston was great. I agree with you on that one.
Well, think about it too then. Okay, so Kim Young, Roddy McDowall, Charlton Heston. Now, if you think about it, the Americans that, I don't know if that was 68 that came out. So America didn't land on the moon until 69. They didn't land on the moon until 69, right? First, Neil Armstrong, first steps on the moon were by him, not until a year later. So they have these guys in a capsule traveling through time. Think about the imagination for that movie, right? And the year was 2049 or 2088 or 3088, and they land on this planet. And it's funny to me because they're arguing with themselves, the astronauts, and then they all get killed off except Charlton Heston, right? And then he can't talk because they shoot him in the throat. They all say, oh, he's a talking, they can't believe a human could talk, and he can't talk because they shoot him in the throat. And the movie, to me, again, if it was on right now, I'd watch it again. It's almost like Patton. I've seen Patton 30, 40 times, maybe more. Patton, to me, we talk about great American movies, war movies. My dad fought in Patton's army in World War II. Now, I'm not saying he knew George Patton. He didn't, but he was in the 8th Army. So when I see Patton, gosh, I can't get enough of that movie. And I've seen it 40 times. So, going back to the Planet of the Apes, though, that was, again, some great sci-fi for that time, Marty, because the Americans hadn't even landed on the moon yet. That was a year away. So the imagination for that movie, I can only imagine how it did that summer when it came out. I bet you people remember back then they had GP ratings, not PG, they were GP ratings. And then they changed them to PG. So, and then they'd say the message on the boards would be held over for 2 more weeks, Planet of the Apes. Remember that? They'd have these messages. So when I think of those times that you mentioned, it brings back a lot of memories. It really does.
So think about it. You're talking about George Patton. He was in the 1912 Olympic Games. He came in third place behind Jim Thorpe in the pentathlon. Did you know that?
No, I didn't. I think I did read that, but yeah, keep going.
So those Olympics was in August. So he gets on the boat from Stockholm, Sweden. He comes back, and that year in 1912, on November the 7th, they were Army was number one, Carlisle was number two, and they played in that famous game between Carlisle Indians, Jim Thorpe, and Army, led by Dwight D. Eisenhower. And George Patton was the manager of the team. I think he had an injury, so he was on the sideline in that famous game, but he was with Jim Thorpe in the 1912 Olympic Games. And that was the game that Carlisle and Jim Thorpe beat Army. And now in that game, Eisenhower went both ways. He played linebacker and running back. And late in the third quarter, the game was tied 7-7. Thorpe breaks the line, and he's in the open field, and he goes one-on-one with Dwight D. Eisenhower. It's mono versus mono, and Thorpe ran him over and tore his knee up. And after that game, it kind of ended Eisenhower's career. And saved his life too, because he was about to get kicked out of West Point on too many demerits, and he survived. And in his autobiography, he says that football game changed my life. I might have never been general of the Army, might have never been president, but I survived West Point. What a great story! And of course, your dad got the he was your dad was in Patton Army. What a great story!
Well, my father. I've got to tell you this. They call that the greatest generation, right? World War II, the greatest generation that ever lived. My father saw combat time. My father got the Purple Heart. He got some shrapnel. He had a scar right here on his cheek. And you know what he said to me about the war? He never said one word. He never said anything, ever. He never said one word. And I know that there was some bad memories there for sure. I think he saw some things he never wanted to see again. But my old man was a man's man. He really was. And I promise you, we saw some things. I still have a Nazi cross that he got from I have it. I kept that. He had a Nazi blade that he took off of a German, and my brother got that. So my dad saw things in war that he never wanted to ever talk about again. My old man, oh, I miss him so much. When I think of him, I think, gosh, what a man's man that guy was. He did his service. He served the United States, and he never said nothing about glory or honor or bullets or nothing ever. Never told me one thing. And that's that generation there was pretty much like that. They didn't say anything about anything. And wow, that. So when you talk about George Patton and Douglas MacArthur, right? Think about the generals in World War II and what egos they had, right? Eisenhower, the commander of the armies. Patton, Douglas MacArthur, the commander of the Pacific, Omar Bradley. Gosh, what great generals the Americans had. And thank God, because I'll tell you, that war there, man, that was one for all time, right? If you lose that war, if Hitler wins, and think about that, we may not even be here, Marty. If Germany conquers the world, we may not even be here.
Hey, let's go to our sponsors. I want to continue that subject. Hey, guys, I just want you to know this podcast, this show is being sponsored by Everguard Roofing and Solar. And let me tell you this, if you right now, especially with this cold weather and people are losing their power, can you imagine if you had a solar system, Ed, that you could have alternative power? And right now, I'll tell you what, these windmills are freezing up. They're not working, but solar works. And let me tell you, Everguard Roofing and Solar, and of course, anything you need roofing, these are the guys, and they've been around. They just got through, they do a lot of jobs here in town, and they've been big behind us on this show. And of course, their other sponsor, Extreme Clean. If you want your carpet clean, or if you need your building clean, they're the ones to go to. And then we want to support the people on Route 66, all those restaurants, all those people on Route 66. And believe me, Ed and I, we've been doing a lot of takeouts. Now they just finally opened up the restaurants. What 25% right now you could go in?
Last Thursday, 25%.
But I'm one of these. I'm an old guy, and I'm waiting for the vaccine like Ed. But I am going to takeouts. As a matter of fact, when I get done this show, my wife wants me to go get a takeout, so I'm going to do it. So, but we want to thank our sponsors, and without them, we wouldn't have the show. Hey, listen, let's talk about American Black Month, because you're talking about World War II. My father really had a connection to the African Americans in World War II. Back in 1943 to 46, my dad was the port commander of Liverpool. And then when the war ended in Europe, he was the port commander in Manila Bay in the Philippines. And he was in charge of about 52,000 African American troops. In those days, the Army was not integrated. So most of the troops worked they did labor work, on those Liberty ships when they brought in the tanks and stuff, getting ready for D-Day on June 6, 1944. But I will tell you this, my dad his name was Martin Luther Watts. And so he was the first Martin Luther before there was a Martin Luther King. And so his experience with the African Americans was very intimate, because he was in charge of those troops, and he understood the pain they were going through in the segregation, and it was pretty bad. Now, the Army did integrate in 1948. They were the first segment of the American population to have integration. Before, in the 1950s and 60s, the Army was the one that led the way. And a lot of these African Americans got a chance to go on and get their degree with the GI Bill. I'll tell you one thing, a lot of African Americans I talked to that were in World War II and Korea War and Vietnam, they went on to get their college degree because of the GI Bill, to be able to pay for their education. They didn't have opportunity. But I'll tell you one story. When the war ended in 1945 in May, they took those 60,000 African American troops, put them on these big Liberty ships. They went through the Panama Canal to the Philippines. Now, Manila Bay was destroyed by the Japanese, so they had to rebuild the Philippines, Manila, the port of Manila. But you've been to San Francisco, Alcatraz. You know how small Alcatraz is, right?
Yes.
To show you how bad the Army was, they had all these African Americans do all this labor work there from like 8 to 6. And then at the end of the day, they put them on ferry boats and put all the African Americans on one island all day. And then the next morning, they ferried them back. Now, just so you know, they came from Liverpool, where the weather was always damp and cold. They go to the Philippines, where they're on the equator, and there was no air conditioning. My dad lived on those tents on that island. He felt their pain really bad, and it was terrible conditions. Can you imagine sticking all those guys? It was almost like a slave ship being stacked up to go to North America. You know how the slaves are stacked up on each other on a slave ship? That's what happened. So he felt the pain. And so after the war, in the early 50s, we opened up a furniture store in Henrietta, Oklahoma. It was called the Watts Big Green Warehouse. And a lot of those African-American soldiers needed jobs. So my dad hired them to work at the furniture store. And one of the first things they did, we painted the building. Well, the people were so prejudiced, they boycotted our store and they picketed our store because we hired African-Americans. That's a true story. And then by the end of the 50s, we were kind of ran out of town. Little Henrietta, and I hate to say it, it was a very blue collar. Most of the people didn't have much of an education. My parents were college graduates. And so it was so bad, my dad just forced him out of business. And he had a fraternity brother in Albuquerque. And he said, why don't you come to Albuquerque? You're going to find more of a coalition society. And it was more blue, I guess you can call it the Rainbow Coalition back then, but we didn't have the segregation here in Albuquerque, even though some of the African Americans that I got to grow up here in Albuquerque, they had their issues. There was some prejudice. But what I'm saying is, this is African American month, and that's my story with the African American, my dad. I'm so proud what he did. But those guys went through a lot of pain in World War II, don't you think, Ed?
Well, that's a great story. The Tuskegee Airmen, what kind of contribution did they make to the war? They made a huge one, and they weren't recognized for it until too much later. And I think one of the things you mentioned, the Navajo, it's Black History Month. It is Black History Month. The Navajo wind talkers. If it wasn't for them, the Japanese couldn't break that code. Do we win the war? But going back to Black History Month, it always bothered me, and I got to tell you that it still does. It was a segregated army. That goes back to the 54th unit in the Civil War, right? You ever seen the movie Glory? The movie Glory is one of the best. Another great war movie, right? Another great war movie. A young Denzel Washington, Morgan Freeman, Matthew Broderick, a great cast. I'm a big Civil War buff, huge Civil War buff. So it bothered me then. It bothered me now. I know it's over, and I know a lot of people say we got to forget that, but if you don't remember your history, you're doomed to repeat it. So we need to remember that. We need to remember that. It bugged me. It bothered me. And I'm going to tell you why. We got a segregated army. And they said in some cases that the African-American soldiers could not eat in the cafeteria, but the German prisoners of war could. That bugged me, man. It still does. That was wrong. That was absolutely wrong. Hopefully, that's part of our history. Look, we got to be honest about things, right? We always say that. And I give Dr. King a lot of credit. I give him credit because his movement, all he said in his movement, we're going to make him live up to the Constitution where it said all men were created equal. He did it non-violently. What if he had been a violent, what if he had advocated violence? He knows that movement would have been over. So I just think that there's been some shameful times in our history. I know we've moved past that, but that's why today, we just have to try. That's why I said to you, let's celebrate American history. Some of the history that we have isn't always good, and that needs to be said too. But we are Americans. We all are Americans. Doesn't matter where I'm from, man. I'm of Mexican descent. That's true, but I'm an American. I've never lived in Mexico a day in my life. Yeah. Wait. Let me just say this though. Let me just say this. That doesn't mean I'm not proud of my culture, but I'm an American. I live in America. So I just want to end with that.
So, when I moved to Albuquerque, we moved up in the Northeast Heights over by Windrock. And I would say half of my neighborhood was Hispanic surname people. And I remember as a little kid, Randy Baca lived like 2 doors down, and Randy and I played together. And one day, and remember, I'm coming from Oklahoma, and I call Randy a Mexican. And that's when I realized the worst thing you could call somebody in Albuquerque in Spanish, a Mexican, because number one, they're not Mexican. They're from New Mexico. And by the way, the Hispanic culture in New Mexico was here before the Pilgrims ever came. We had Santa Fe was a city where there was no Pilgrim. But I remember that when he told me, Marty, never call me a Mexican. I'm a new Mexican, but most importantly, I'm American. Yes, but I have a Hispanic culture, but I'm not from Mexico. Now, maybe you want to call somebody that came over from Mexico a Mexican. And I was in the 2nd grade at that time, Ed. And I never did after that moment. And these kids are guys I grew up with, Carl Miranda, Randy Baca, Jimmy Garcia, all those guys. I never did call anybody a Mexican again, ever in my life. But I remember as a little boy that there was prejudice in Albuquerque in those days because people would move in from Texas and they had some kind of prejudice against you. You probably ran across some of it as a kid growing up. And I think we'd be stupid not to mention there was some prejudice. Now, with that saying, New Mexico the Hispanic population has been here for over 300 years. Mexico only controlled New Mexico for a very short time. So you could say that, but here's the thing is, the dialect up in northern New Mexico is Castilian Spanish. That goes back to the 17th century. They still speak that dialect up there. Spanish dialect. So yes, you as a Hispanic American, you probably experienced some prejudice of some form or another, right? And maybe the person who went out, he didn't know better. But let me tell you, as a little boy, I learned to appreciate our culture here. And I think the greatest thing a person can do in New Mexico, go to the Spanish Culture Center and just go there for the whole day and look at all the exhibits. I think if you come out of there, you would have a different perspective about our culture. Don't you think?
I think our culture here in New Mexico is very rich. And I think, you make a good point there. I do want to tell you something though, okay? But this is important for you to know. that both sets of my grandparents came from Mexico. I'm not ashamed to tell you that, okay? But they came, this goes back to the Pancho Villa Revolution. One of my great grandmother came because Pancho Villa's army was riding up and taking all the men away, and it was a revolution. So they came here, okay? They would have rather stayed in their home, where they lived, but they came here. So my grandfather, he moved here as well. He had some problems over there with the revolution as well. He moved here, but I think they would have rather stayed in their. My grandfather was on his way back to going back to Mexico, and they talked him out of it in El Paso. So, but I want people to understand that yes, people come from different places. I'm proud of I don't say Hispanic. I'm a Mexican American, but I'm an American. Okay, so there's too much emphasis these days. There's Russian, people that came from Russia, people that came from Pakistan, from India, that are Americans. And so there's so much emphasis on, where are you from? Where are you from? You're an American if you live here, and you're proud of you. I'm proud of what Americans do, what we've done. I'm steeped in American culture. I grew up here, right? But yet I still, as far as my own culture, my mom and dad spoke Spanish in front of us. Now, so we didn't understand, but you know what? It's in my blood. So I started picking it up. I started understanding what they were saying. Now, I still can't speak fluently. I wish I had learned to do that. I'm very proud of my culture, but I'm also proud that I live in America. And people, they lose sight of that. Now, America is the greatest country in the world. We got all these people from everywhere to forming this country, and people forget how great we are. And recently, it's a fractured country, and we can sit there and say it's Democrats, Republicans, Trump, Pelosi, whoever it is. We have to remember what unites us is more important than what divides us. We have to remember that. We have to get back to hopefully some kind of unity in this country, because it's sad to see right now where we're at. We can blame whoever we want, Democrats, Republicans, Whigs, it doesn't matter. It's sad to see where we are right now.
Well, the one thing that binds us together, our government, is the American Constitution. What I'm worried about is taking away, is tearing up the Constitution. I'm more of a constitutionalist. I believe in our First Amendment, Second Amendment rights, and I know you do too. And I'm really concerned about the censorship, our rights, and those are things I'm going to fight for. I'm going to fight for freedom of speech. I will always fight to my death for your right to say what you want. I don't care what side of politics you're on, but you have the right. You should not be censored or taken off some platform. And I'm worried about these big tech companies getting too much power, because our Constitution was pretty special. Whoever put that, those guys who put that together. Is it perfect, Ed? No, it's not. But let me tell you this: we still, of all the governments in the world, we have one of the greatest government constitutions ever put together, and it stands its time. It's been over 200 years. Does it have faults? Yes, but I'm all for. So I'm more so now at my age. And I'll tell you what, I'm starting. I went back and I'm starting reading the book of the Constitution Convention. I think it was 1789 or 89 in Philadelphia. But I'm starting to read that. You might want to read how we formed the Constitution. Now, the biggest issue back then was the issue of slavery, and Ben Franklin and those guys realized that they weren't going to get the 13 colonies to come together unless they come up with a compromise on slavery. On the slavery issue, it was a compromise, but it resulted in the Civil War in 1860. It came back to bite us. And that was, but probably we wouldn't have the United States if we didn't compromise in 1789. And so, but thank God, and then even with the slavery issue ended in 1860, the Bill of Rights, that was a struggle for another 100 years, Ed. For another 100 years until 1960. So talking about Black America, and then it got to a point where finally it's been a struggle for all these people. But the one thing that's kept us together was the United States Constitution. Don't you think, Ed? The Constitution.
Well, if you think about Ben Franklin, Aaron Burr, the framers of the Constitution, Thomas Jefferson, Patrick Henry. Man, think about the times that they're writing that in, right? They said every man has a right to bear arms. They could have never foreseen what that became, 200 some plus years later. So, yes, that Constitution, I'll tell you, you're right. It formed a country in 1776. We have to remember what unites us more than divides us. It's sad to see what we're becoming. There's still some unity, and I think we need to try to get back to hopefully understanding each other's differences instead of saying, oh, he doesn't belong here or she doesn't belong here or they don't need to come here. And yet there has to be, we can't bring everybody in. That's true, right? Especially during a global pandemic. We can't do that. I understand that. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying, I think with the country that we formed here and the moments I think of my American moments, I remember writing something in second grade. I probably still have it about this is my country. I put a sticker of a flag on my paper. You're learning how to longhand write. And I got a really good grade on it about being proud to be an American. And we've gotten away from some of that. And people, again, they want to say, you don't belong here. You don't belong here. You get out. We need to, hey, look, Mark Smith's a good friend of mine, right? Mark Smith's a good friend. He's a good friend of yours. I may disagree with Mark politically, but Mark is a friend. I've come to understand that I can disagree with him politically and we're still friends. It does. I just prefer not to talk politics with him. The sports guy, the guy knows, he's an encyclopedia of sports, right? He knows as much as anybody I know. So talking sports with the guy, I love it. Now, politics, we're never going to agree. So this is not talk about that. You're not going to get me to think the way you do. I'm not going to get you to think the way that I do. But I respect the guy. I still respect his view.
Yeah, I don't agree with him. There's some things I don't agree with him, and I just believe the thing. It's at this stage right now, the younger generation needs to go back and look at read the Constitution and see where we are, because I don't want to lose this. That's what made us a great country. Now it's not perfect, and is there things that could be amended? I guess so, but I'm not all. But it's one document that's been true to us for over 200 years, and I think it makes us different. And I hope people realize how important. And so I'm starting to go back, Ed, and start reading things on the Constitution, studying it. Because I believe I don't want to lose our First Amendment. I don't want to be censored because Google doesn't like what I say or Facebook doesn't like. I think it's wrong. I might disagree with somebody. Now I understand if you get on a social media and you're inciting a riot or something, but that's not the case. If you have opinion, you shouldn't be taken off because you believe this way or that way. And that I'm going to fight. And I don't care what side of the political spectrum you're on, you should have the right to say what you want. I don't care if I disagree with you or not. I'll go to my death fighting for that. Now, with that saying, we need to go to our sponsors for our next segment. Hey, Ed, do you think right now we're talking about Everguard Roofing and Solar? Do you think with this Green Deal, my feeling on this Green Deal, Ed, is that I'm for green energy because I think in the future we're going to have to go to green energy, but I'm not for dumping the oil and gas industry right now. I think you need a progressive way to get there, and I think solar is one way to go, and there's other alternative energies. But I believe since 35% of New Mexico income is oil and gas, you just can't cut off the spigot. But I do believe we need to go forward with green energy concepts, and solar is one of them. What do you think, Ed?
Well, they said that today in the paper that they were going to put hopefully they're going to cease talking about the oil and lease agreements that are currently in place here in New Mexico. You mentioned New Mexico depends a lot on that revenue. So I think they're going to hopefully take a pause on that. You can't cut off that whole thing right away. I believe, there used to be a motto a couple of years ago, drill, baby, drill. I heard that a lot. But I'm going to see how that goes. I know what President Biden's talking about doing. And I think I know what the oil and gas has done here. Believe me, I'm aware of that. So we'll see. And I think there has to be alternative sources of energy going forward. They've talked about oil and gas polluting the climate. I'm not environmental. I don't understand enough about it to tell you anything. I just know what I read, right? Because I'm not an environmentalist. But I've heard what the damage has been done by some of that. So we'll see. But I think I agree with you. You can't
So
shut
Jimmy,
it off right away.
Jimmy, are you available to come on? Are you on, Jimmy, our producer? Can we get your voice?
Sure. What do you want?
We've got a new sponsor, and why don't you tell us? It's about a device, and maybe later in the show we'll show you. But we've got a new sponsor where you just plug into a 110 outlet, and it kills the. It's proven, and of course, nothing's 100%, but it kills the viruses, the odor, and everything. And it's a way I think it's going to help clean up this environment at homes and everything. Why don't you tell us about this, our new sponsor?
All right. Yeah. So one of the neat thing, actually, what I'll do is I'll just show you a quick 2-minute video.
Yeah, we've got a new sponsor. And Ed, watch this sponsor. Everybody, every restaurant, every every home should have one of these devices. And it's not a we'll show this video, and it's something that actually does knock out the virus. It does kill everything in the air it contacts. Why don't we show them a video? And they are coming on as our new sponsor, and I'll let Jimmy put it on there for us. We'll announce who they are. And I think we'll come on. I think the video is going to come on here in just a second. And watch this, folks who are watching the show. This is something you're talking about, the environment, and try and make people feel safe. We've got something you can buy out there that will really help your home or your business. Sorry, and let's see what we got. Can we show them the video?
Yeah, I'm trying.
We're going to bring it on. But Jim, Ed, this is really going to be helpful for families, especially if you've got allergies or in the spring where people just can't, they're miserable for a couple months, right?
It's coming around, around the corner. Spring's around the corner. Hard to believe.
This actually this stuff does kill the COVID-19 virus. If it's turned on for 3 hours, here it is, Active Pure
because
technology.
Because of COVID-19, the air we breathe and the things we touch are no longer safe. Shared air and surfaces harbor risks due to COVID and other pathogens. But with Active Pure technology, air and surfaces can be purified and disinfected quickly and safely while you share and occupy spaces with others. Active Pure is a patented, advanced active form of PCO technology. It works by creating and propelling safe and powerful disinfecting molecules into the air in a room, which quickly seek and destroy pathogens everywhere. Active Pure molecules work by piercing the shell of a virus or bacteria to destroy its living environment, thereby preventing it from replicating or doing harm. Active Pure technology is designed to use the law of gases to carry its safe disinfecting molecules into every nook and cranny in every shared space. The law of gases is the reason that the smell of microwaved popcorn immediately spreads through your entire home. These odorless and invisible Active Pure molecules fly through the air from our portable or installed Active Pure products, quickly and safely destroying pathogens in the air and on surfaces. Active Pure is very different from other technologies that take a passive approach and require that the pathogen be pulled into an inefficient filter, UV light, or plain PCO mechanism. Active Pure does not wait to see if by luck the pathogen is captured. It seeks and destroys them quickly, wherever they may be, in the air you breathe or on the surfaces you touch. Active Pure can deliver measurable and guaranteed results, giving you the peace of mind to know that you are providing the best protection for the people you care for. Available in over 70 products, both portable and installed, Active Pure technology is used in hospitals, state houses, and other shared facilities across the world. It is proven by science and validated by multiple third parties. Active Pure is the key technology in our FDA Class II medical device, the Aeris Medical Guardian.
So Active Pure technology, Ed, it's like investing into a new laptop, about a cost of a new laptop. You can have one of these devices. And Jimmy, we're going to have this up on our Facebook page where you can get one of these. Right, Jimmy? Are you going to post it up there?
Yeah, I'll post it and share a little bit more about it soon. we're trying to put together, different options for people so that, they can get more information. But, my business have been to try to help businesses to two things. One is to get them more customers. Okay. And, and that's through various marketing channels and stuff that we're doing to get there. But the other side of that equation is also making sure that they are able to reopen safely, given what, we're dealing with today. And so what's really neat about this technology is that this has been around for, since the early 2000s, actually. So this is actually derived, so ActivePure is actually derived from technology that was what NASA actually developed for the space station. So this was, and because what they found was that when they had put in their air filtration system, it worked fine when it was with people around, and got rid of the carbon dioxide and all that stuff in the, in that capsule, right? But then when they started growing plants, they realized that the plants were giving off other chemicals and other things that were causing the astronauts to become ill, and they discovered that was problematic. And so as a result, they came up with the new technology derived from this. And it was a university in Wisconsin that really helped make that development. And so the company Aris, formerly Electrolux, some of you may have heard of Electrolux, they do the vacuums and stuff. And anyway, they bought the technology and improved upon it, and created ActivePure. Okay, and so
with that saying, Ed, what's going to happen is people who are getting their businesses back because of the pandemic, they've got to have a device where they make their customers feel safe. And this company will give you a sticker. Now you plug this in, Ed, and within hours or 30 minutes, within an hour or so, it starts to affect, sometimes quicker than that, right?
Yeah, the time is going to vary depending on what it is and so forth. But the neat thing is that it reduces various types of contaminants like mold and fungus,
Viruses,
bacteria and viruses, and it's in the air and on the surfaces. And one of the most recent release research, they've been doing research along the way for this device as well. And one of the things that they've been doing is that like they did the tests on the SARS-CoV-2, which is the coronavirus that we're dealing with right now. And they were able to show that within 3 minutes with an aerosolized, nebulized, virus particle, that they were able to reduce it by 99.96% in the air within 3 minutes. And
wow.
So that's incredible, Ed. This thing covers 3,000 square feet, Ed. So you put in a room that covers 3,000 square feet. So I see this as a great sponsor for American Talk It Up, Ed, where people have a chance to make their place safe. And we've got a device that is proven. NASA and government, the Pentagon's using this device. Yeah. So I think it's going to be great for these customers.
There's a lot of Major League Baseball teams that are using this device, and if you go to the Thrive Redux, which is website.com that I put together to kind of corral all this information, you can get.
So the Chicago Cubs, Ed, Chicago Cubs, St. Louis Cardinals, Arizona Diamondbacks, they're all using this device at their facilities right now.
Wow,
Ed.
That's impressive.
And then, and can you imagine putting this in the Lobo locker room?
I'm imagining, because if all those other teams are using it, I would think it's going to start filtering on, no pun intended, filtering on down.
Hope. Yeah, that's our hope. And this is not a filtration, which is more of a passive, where you wait for the antigen, all the contaminant stuff to come through it before it can get neutralized. What this does is it pushes it out, so it's an active form of disinfectant.
Amazing.
So as long as there's air.
Here's something, this stuff gets in the ventilation system and kills those viruses and those moles. So Ed, we couldn't find a perfect sponsor that we're actually helping people, Ed. And so for the investment on one of these things is like buying a brand new laptop, investment of a laptop. And you have one of the devices that covers 3,000 square feet. It does kill it. And I guess you have to replace, is it a filter every 9 months?
Year, yeah.
Every year you fill a little filter. but this is going to be a game changer because a lot of these restaurants can't afford this high power cleaning equipment, Ed. So here's something they can put in, especially like the Frontier restaurant where they have art pictures. This is perfect for them.
Yeah.
Don't you think, Ed?
The neat thing is that it'll help reduce the labor need to clean and disinfect the spaces that we are in publicly. So that's the first thing that this will help do. Because as long as the air can get to it, you know, the particles will be in that air. So that's why it's so effective in that way.
And you know what, Ed? This is perfect for a nail salon. You know those nail salons that make all that odor? This stuff takes all the odor out at a nail salon. And you know how, so this is where we need to get people to get the nail salons here in, and people who are watching this show, go to our Facebook page, America Talk It Up. We'll have some contact information up there if you're interested in getting one of these devices. But I'll tell you what, talking about being green and helping people, Ed, we couldn't find a better sponsor than these guys.
You know, that's exciting news. I think there's been a lot of people kind of nervous about these old ventilation systems, and with good reason. So this kind of thing here can really eradicate a lot of that, it sounds like. So that's good news. That's good news.
What we're going to do, Ed, we'll try to get you a little pocket device down the road so you can use at your house and you can see how it affects your home, Ed.
Yeah, great news.
And your wife will love that. And
oh yeah, you bet.
And so you know, Ed and I, we do believe in helping people. We want to go out, and here's something that we can help. And of course, we talk about solar, but here's a device where you can put in your house, and it'll help you right away. And especially with these, with coming up with the, you know, the allergies coming up and stuff like that, and the pollen, this kills it all. And you know, people who are miserable for months when the pollen comes out, right, Ed?
And it's just around the corner. You know, spring's around the corner. A couple of weeks here. Well, probably about what, 4 to 5 weeks.
4 to 5 weeks.
And I'll tell you, the allergy season here in New Mexico is particularly bad on some. There's one guy I know. I remember he had to take a shot, and the shot was only effective for like a month, and his eyes were always watering. Poor guy, man. Poor guy. Yeah. So if something like that could help, you know what kind of benefit that would be for people? Wow.
Yeah.
So this is going to be our sponsors, and every week we'll try to come up and talk about personal testimonials of people who are using this device. So when you stay tuned and watch our show in the future, and we'll come up, and the greatest testimonial of people's their own testimony using the device. And so, but I just think that this is something we can help these people feel more comfortable with this pandemic. And obviously, we have to have a device that kills the viruses right away, the molds, all that stuff, the bacteria. And now we've got a device that NASA is using, the Pentagon's using, Major League Baseball's using. It's working out there, Ed.
You'd have to think, like I said, if Major League Baseball is using it, it's going to be, you know, they feel like it's a good product. It's going to, that's impressive.
And it's not a brand new product. And that's the one thing I also want to make sure that people understand. I mean, this thing has been around for a long time and has been, you know, developed and tested and added to and improved upon. And so this is the newest iteration, and it has gone through some rigorous FDA testing. So they're right now petitioning to get it. So there's multiple different units, and they all have this one component in it that's called the Active Pure module that does the disinfecting and so forth. So future shows we'll give you more detail how to get one of these, but please go up to America Talking Up Facebook. We'll probably have something up today on it, and we'll start getting, and every time we do a show, Ed, we'll give people more information. But this is one thing that I feel good that we're helping somebody, Ed. We're actually helping people here.
No, that's there's so many people that need assistance, especially during this time, and if we can do our part, hey, that's awesome.
Yeah.
And think about it. Most people can afford to buy a new laptop. That's about the cost of one of these devices.
And we're making it, I mean, we're doing wholesaling to the public, and also volume discount as well. And, you know, for people that need more than one unit because of their size of their business or home. So
anyway, and
Anyway.
let's get back to our
Sorry.
segment. But thanks,
Ed.
Jimmy, for bringing that
Thanks,
information
Jimmy.
to us.
I think we don't have much time left, but yeah.
Well, let's talk about you had on your sports desk show. Hey, by the way, if you want to watch Ed Nunes on Sports Desk, what time did that show comes on Comcast?
11:30 on Tuesdays.
11:30, and you can go up to America. You can go up to ProView Network's Facebook or YouTube and watch the show every week. It's up there to watch it. But Ed's been doing Sports Desk for how many years now?
Actually, about, gosh, I think by 6th year now. I used to be a co-host with Scott Galletti, but I've been hosting by myself now for about a year and a half.
And on the show you just taped today, tell us who you talked to, because that's our lead into our subject about what's going on with the bringing sports back to New Mexico. Tell us what's going on.
Well, I had a Trisco Heritage athletic director, boys basketball coach, Adrian Ortega. We were talking about maybe sports coming back, about his success out there at Trisco Heritage. He's been in 3 championship games in 6 years. So heck of a coach, heck of a good man. When we were talking a lot about, the online learning, a bunch of different subjects. Coach Ortega was a great guest.
So right now we're one of the few states in America we don't have high school sports. One of the few. There's not too many. Is California's one of them, right?
California's another, I think.
And we're getting close, and there's a lot of moving parts. One of the big parts is the teachers union. They're very powerful, but I think they're trying to work something out. But I just hope, I want the kids back in the classroom. I think they're safe enough where I'm for them coming back. A hybrid model is being used in other states, very successful, Ed. I don't see a reason why we shouldn't go to the hybrid model right now, because it's being used. And for my research in Oklahoma and Texas, the virus has not gone out of control. There's been some places where there's a few people get the virus, but it's not something where the schools are being shut down. They're going back. And I just believe we have to do it, Ed, because it's just been too long for these kids not being in class. And there's a lot of kids are AWOL out there. So I hope this happens soon, Ed. I don't want this to go through the year we don't have kids at school. What do you think?
Well, they seem to be moving closer to that. And I know there's concerns on the teachers union about the vaccination, some other issues. I'm thinking they're going to be in school soon. I hope I'm with you. We know the online learning wouldn't have been ideal for me back in the day. It's not ideal, right? But we know the kids need to be back in school. We also hope and pray that it's safe. We don't want anybody getting sick, right? So, I think they're moving closer to that. And they've the other thing that's been broached that I've heard is maybe extending the learning year, maybe extending it. And that's not easy on anyone, but they've been out of school for so long that I think that a lot of options that normally wouldn't be on the table are going to be on the table. I really believe that.
Well, I believe it is safe, Ed, because it's been proven in other states and other school districts. So I think it's out there, but listen, I mean, and I brought up back when we came on in early January. Remember, I brought up that the first thing we should do in New Mexico is vaccine the teachers. Remember, we talked about that,
Right?
And they should have done that from the very beginning. I think we wouldn't be at this point if they would have. And think about it, Ed. We're only talking about how many teachers are there in the state of New Mexico? About 10. Less than 10,000?
I'd hate to even guess. I'm not sure.
So anyway, with that said, our time has ended, and I just want to thank everybody for coming on. I think we talked about a lot of stuff. We've got a new sponsor, and we talked about African American and stuff. Believe me, folks, we're special. We're all American. We all have the same color of blood, red, right, Ed?
That's right.
Same.
Don't forget that. And I'm not saying that to you. This is for everybody. You know what? You've made friends with a lot of people. You made that clear, from all different walks of life. So have I. Let's celebrate our diversity and stop looking at negative things. Let's remember what unites us rather than what divides us.
And I agree with that. You and I are for that. And being athletes like you and I were, we played with all sorts of minorities and different people, and we're all the same. The Rainbow
Uh-huh.
Coalition. So we know that. And one thing special about New Mexico, I think 53% of the surnames in Mexico is Hispanic. We do have very few states have our blended type of culture, don't you think? We're one of the few
I agree.
states that
I
have
totally
that.
agree.
And we have a large Native American population. We don't have a large African American, but we are very blended in that, and we're very special. So, folks, go to us. We're going to be on at 8 o'clock on Thursday nights on Comcast 26, and now you can go up to ProViewNetworks.com and watch us on the internet if you can't get Comcast. So, folks, I'll look for you next time. Ed, thanks again. Great show. I look forward to talking about what makes America great on America Talk It Up.
You bet.